Welcome everyone. My name is Baylan Megino. I'm with Global Dream Makers, and today, in celebration of Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month at Macys, celebrating at Macys, we have our different artists. And today we have Cynthia Tom, a wonderful artist here, based here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thanks, Baylan.
A beautiful work behind you. But before we get started, let me tell them a little bit about you. Okay, so for over 30 years, Cynthia's art, cultural community art workshops, and curatorial projects bring to light stories and insights behind family trauma, social justice, healing, spirituality, and empowerment of women. As board president of Asian American Women Artists Association from 2007 to 2018, and founding director of A Place of Her Own, which is an arts-based healing program for women of color, she has developed ways to artistically explore chronic heartache by unraveling family patterns of her own and helping others to do the same, to move towards resilience. What incredibly powerful work, Cynthia. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask you briefly, uh, in your artist journey, what has art come to mean to you?
Well, in a nutshell, so I've been making art probably since I was really little. We didn't call it art back then. We called it craft, and it was with found objects. And I didn't know at the time, but we grew up really poor, and my parents were very poor, growing up Chinese American in Chinatown, San Francisco. And eventually I started painting. That was about 30 years ago. And I realized that I could use art to start to heal things that just caused me pain all the time and low self-confidence. And I started exploring my family's patterns. They had a lot of trauma, bought and sold and brought to the US, and just what they went through. I've actually turned it into artwork and been able to put up shows and invite other artists to do the same and engage in communities that never heard our stories before, the Asian American community. So art for me is, first of all, healing internally and letting emotions out, but then also turning it around into civic engagement and educating the general public about our stories and watching compassion grow for ourselves, for each other, and then within our community and our families, and then also the public. So it does everything.
So, oh, wow. As you were speaking, I could really sense the threads being pulled from the past that an artist can bring forward and in that healing, just by connecting back and acknowledging this is what happened in the past. And as an artist, you take those as seeds that go and blossom into whatever your art is coming into being.
Yeah, well, for me, when people say, what is your art medium? I always tell them my family stories, my cultural heritage. But it's not just the pretty stereotype tourist stories. It's what happened to our families as we immigrated. And a lot of it was forced immigration, especially for the women. But I believe talking about it and making beautiful art engages people's hearts and opens up empathy. So that's why I love art.
And so your art has taken different mediums, and you've included different subject matter. Uh, what would you like to tell us about that journey?
Well, I have, I'm hoping we can show the pictures. I have installation that's growing. It's been shown in different places on different coasts. And I take vintage pictures of my mother, my father, and my grandmother, mostly because they're the stories I know. But and then I include text, but I put them on these little pillows. And which is great for shipping, but also we're able to hang them low enough so they'll hit people in the head. So if they walk in and they're not paying attention to the stories, because I generally paint the walls dark and write the stories of my family in chalk, which is the stories for a lot of Asian Americans and Chinese Americans in particular, of being sold and traded. So yeah, I've been in spaces where people will start crying because they just recognize I don't know, something just breaks open for them. And I also include like little questions or little ways for people to participate in the process. And I always ask people what was happening in the root country when your family left, no matter what your ethnicity is. Even if you're white, your family came from somewhere else if you're in the US. So what was happening when your family left? And chances are there was coping mechanisms that your family had to do to deal with trauma. And then over the generations, it gets passed down and changed and kind of twisted, and you make it into your own trauma, which can be undone. And that's a lot of the workshops I do, is about recognizing and exploring those patterns and where they came from. That's why I ask what was happening when your family left the root country, and what happened when they got here. And then just slowly using intentional art to be gentle with yourself, but then to also start to unravel from all those beliefs that you've developed that came from if you look at your family, you are repeating patterns for generations, and you can stop it. I hope I'm answering your questions.
Oh yeah, yes, you are. I mean, you're talking about the internal journey that was behind the progression of your art.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's incredibly powerful, because what I found, at least in my journey, was that things that I couldn't articulate, that I wasn't even mentally aware of, came out in art. They were,
Yes.
they were kind of broken open, and then when I would look at what I had created, then in the interpretation of it, I could understand what my brain or what my spirit was trying to express.
I mean,
And
could I show you some of the pictures?
oh yes,
Should I
please.
do that?
Yeah.
Okay. So just bear with me a second. It can be a little messy. So you know what I'm talking about. First of all, so my little family here. It's taking a while to load. So I grew up with parents who never said they were artists, but this is kind of the work they did at the end of. My mom made things from found objects. Like these are McDonald's coffee stir sticks that she saved for many, many decades, but she ended up making this beautiful necklace with it. And then my dad would make sculptures out of whatever he had laying around. And those are my brothers. But I also want to tell people that one of the things that happened to me, and if anything happens to you that puts you up against it, whether it's this pandemic or you hurt yourself, your body gets sick, this helped when instead of fighting it, I just kind of gave into it. And that's when I started becoming an artist with my back injury. I learned how to draw, because all I could do is lay down with a pencil. And this is some of the found object art I was talking about that my family did. This is a wine crate. These are napkins. The furniture are Christmas ornaments that we had from West Elm, I think. So if you use your imagination, anybody can actually make art from nothing. But this puts you in touch with your intuition. And then you also should look at your ethnicity and your gender, at whatever gender you identify with. And this was one of my mentors that encouraged me to look at my Asian Americanness in my 30s. Because growing up in San Francisco, when I did, this was back in the 60s, you didn't have to identify as anything. Everybody accepted everybody for what they were in San Francisco anyway, the neighborhood and the schools I grew up in. But this is a painting that I didn't realize it at the time, but this is a painting about understanding your, like digging into your heritage. So everybody's got a cultural heritage, and this is called Anthropologic Dig. So after I finished it, then the title became apparent, Anthropologic Dig. And I started looking around. Joe said I needed to look at my heritage. I didn't know how to do that, but I joined a group called the Asian American Women Artists Association. And this beautiful book we created helped me really dig down, because we had to also include who our heroes were, an Asian American woman who influenced us. And I didn't have any at the time. I didn't, and so I dig, and it ended up being Baylan, who did Vietnam Memorial. And when she was 19, she actually stood up in Congress, who were accusing her and her parents of being communists. And this is back again in, like, it's, I think it was the 70s. But she was able to stand up to those guys, and she had self-agency. So I aspired to learn how to have self-agency like she did. And now I aspire to teach people to have their own self-agency, so you could speak your mind, stand up for you want, and feel the emotions that you need to feel. So this is another painting. Again, when I'm painting it, I have no idea what it's about. And this ended up becoming the logo for the workshops that I do, called A Place of Her Own, or A Place of Your Own. And it asks, if you had a place of your own, what would it be? Again, a self-agency question. When I was talking about my family trauma, this is my grandmother's mugshot. My grandfather from here was Chinese. He went to China, brought her over. Her village sold her at the age of 21. And I didn't know this till I was in my 30s and started asking who I am. Started doing work around her. She had already passed. She passed when I was 13. And these are the little pillows I'm talking about. The one on the right is my father. The one on the left is my mother. My mother was sold by my grandfather often for his opium when she was a preteen, to the opium dealer who used her a lot. And then my father was purchased in China and brought here and just abused terribly in Oakland, Chinatown for a long time. But he grew up to be a very kind man. So here's one of the installations. This is in Point Reyes, and they let me do whatever I want. They gave me this big space, but these are the stories on the wall. And then the pillows, they let me hang low enough to hit people when they walked in. And it was really effective because it got people talking and really engaging in these stories about a Chinese American family. And this is just another picture. This was my grandmother's wall that I made for her. So in a way, I'm honoring them, but I also wanted to grow awareness of communities of colors, the stories that we have. And so for me, people are talking about equity these days for BIPOC communities, but for me, healing is the foundation for leadership development. It's the foundation for any kind of equity, because if we have lots of bills of rights for women in particular, but for people of color, but if they don't believe they deserve it, or if they're afraid because of past traumas, they can't take advantage of what's being given to them. So I'm a huge believer in healing as the foundation. This, I hope, Baylan, I'm just going on, so I hope it's okay. This painting is iconic for me. I never sold this painting because I didn't realize it, but it became a painting about community. So for me, I encourage people to think about owning, like being strong in what you bring to community, so that you can leave little parts of yourself behind with people that need it or communities that need it. That's what's called launching the gifts. And then this one also is the same vein. I didn't mean to, but it ended up talking about encouraging women to lift themselves off the floor and no more victim. Just get up off the floor, no more doormat, no more victim. And that's what I mean by foundation equity. If women can rise and take ownership of their rights and their God-given rights, that's the foundation for equity. And another painting, this is called Accepting That I Am. And I realized in 2017 that I still felt like I didn't have value, and that I didn't deserve people caring for me still after all these years. So I decided to embed it in the paintings, and it says, from Louise Hay, the book, You Can Heal Your Life. This is, I'm loved and lovable, I'm valued and valuable, and that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So that just, I guess, is my form of meditation. And that's why people who start to understand art can use these art to meditate. Anything that reaches your heart, look at it and understand why it reaches your heart, and then own it, buy a print of it. This is a big mural I did for Dia de los Muertos at Some Arts Cultural Center, which is always miraculous. But this is about helping people looking at your hungry ghosts, which I use to say, you got to look at your ancestral patterns to heal. You got to look at your family patterns to heal. They're not your patterns. All your heartache may be coming from patterns that have been going on for generations. And then I'll stop on this one. This was the last painting I did so far. It's going to be a series of paintings where the dress forms will be rising and they'll all start to have more colorful clothing on them. And this is my wish, that all feminine energies, whether they're male or female, start to see each other as allies instead of competitors, and that we rise together to fight oppression, which is just rampant in the world and in our country in particular. So I'll stop. This is what you see behind me. So these are new, these abstracts are new because here's the lesson. So for some reason, 15 months ago, I got I don't know what's going on with my eyes, but if I read or write very much at all, especially on the phone, I get super dizzy and I get really sick. So instead of fighting it and resenting it, I'm just working on it to own it as a gift. So it's forced me to start painting like this. I'm not doing very many, but I'm just trying to paint without really looking very hard, with colors that make me feel good. And I guess the lesson is, including with the pandemic, is to look for the blessings and the gifts in it, because otherwise you're going to be fighting and angry all the time. And that's kind of in a nutshell how I've been able to use my art. So thank you for letting me show the pictures.
Oh, absolutely. That was beautiful to see all of your work, and to see the progression and the way that people can interact with it. I really like the pillows. I like the pillows and popping into them. Oh, look, there's some art right there. What is this making me aware of? That's the best kind of art. We're not just looking at it. We're actually interacting with it and discovering our own feelings about it, or that are evoked by it. The best kind of art does that. So.
And I don't even know where the pillow idea came from, but I just knew when I started sewing it. I was crying the whole time that I was doing this, and I felt like I was expunging something, but I also felt, I watched people like want to hold them.
Yeah.
And that's the, getting society and our culture to want to embrace something painful and want to care for each other. I think art has the power to do that like nothing else does.
Wow. And I think that's it. I mean, really, what more is there to say? Really?
Well, keep an eye on me on Instagram. So
yes.
Cynthia Tom Art. And I'm not posting very much right now because, like I said, I get really dizzy, but I just have this feeling that things will be healing. And the workshops that I do are all based on things that have worked for me, healing wise, using art. And I hope those will grow online. Again, thanks to the pandemic, which has forced us all to go to Zoom. But Zoom's been a real miraculous tool for me because I can't leave the house. So it's been a blessing. So thank you, Baylan, for finding me. I'm not even sure how you found me.
Well, I think one of your students referred you to me. One of your students from a place of your own. So how often do you offer the class?
Well, In 2009, it started as an artist in residency at the De Young, and that's when I found out there was so much trauma that the women couldn't answer if they had a place of their own, what would it be? Because they couldn't even think that far. So then I started doing these every other year, because that's the funding has been tough to get, although it's changed in the last 2 years, because mental health and art didn't used to go together. And the art funders wanted to see professional artists doing work. But the women with the trauma largely didn't have huge art careers because they had too much self-doubt. But now the funders are merging the two. So I was doing as a 6-month program in my studio at 1890 Bryant once every other year. But now what I want to try to do is have it different workshops online. And the workshops are kind of stair-stepped, but now I just have to let them come out as they need to come out and do them on Zoom for now. And they always end in an exhibition, but there's a lot of photos online to get inspired if you look at A Place of Our Own online and the website. And I usually only take not more than 12 to 15 at a time, because it's really intimate. So right now it's kind of stay tuned.
Yeah. And how long is the class usually?
Well, when we were doing it brick and mortar, the class was 3 hours. It used to be on Thursday nights, and they would come and do potluck, which is a very Asian, eat together thing. But we would have African American, Latina, mainly Latina and Asian Americans were coming in the space, but we also had Caucasian, mixed race, transgender, just whoever felt like they were ready for this. But they would come in because we wanted them to become a family, and the 2020 cohort is still staying together, but come in and eat, ground ourselves, and then start doing these workshops, very stair-step. Like, we look at beliefs that hold you back, and what's the story? Where did those beliefs come from? Because they didn't just come out of nowhere. Generally, it's family. Then we look at family patterns, and you actually do family maps and map in trauma. Then we start to move on to look at your aspirations, and we actually have you create a gift to yourself, which is a love letter collage to yourself. We teach you how to use your intuition with intuitive collage, but the whole program is about turning on your intuition and hearing your voice and sharing really tough stuff with each other, but finding out that there's no judgment or shame, and learning to let that out of your body. And then at some point, we start helping you create your answer to, if you had a place of your own, what would it be? And then have a professional month-long exhibition. But it's all kind of blown up in the air right now. But we're trying to do things online.
Back around, especially now with the mental health awareness.
Yes.
This month is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yes.
And because we're coming out of the pandemic, people are so aware of the need for mental health assistance.
Yes. Yeah. And so that's what I feel like Place offers, kind of unique tools using art. And it's not just making art or finger painting. It's actually art that is a specific thought process. So it's like seeds to get you started on a new thought process. And we have alumni who've gone through it who will speak to whoever. And the only way to keep in touch with us is to get on our mailing list, because there's not a lot of, there's 2 of us kind of running everything, sometimes 1. And pretty soon, I think probably in June, we'll start doing a little bit more public stuff. So a typical class isn't happening right now. And the online, I think I was told we can't go more than 2 hours, but people like to stay and talk. We are going to be doing something I'm going to be doing something through the Legion of Honor on August 10th to coincide with the Guopei Haute Couture show that's up there, because of all the dresses that I do and the cultural heritage I work with. And then I have 2 of our Place alumni that are going to talk about cultural heritage and their artwork. But that's August 10th. Yeah.
It's wonderful to hear that the art community continues to bubble, continues to develop and evolve. Help us come out of this last 2 years, helping us to come out in ultimately more whole. after the last 2 years. That's the goal, I think.
Mhm.
So that
Yeah,
we
I mean, it's wonderful
contribute our
what
wellness.
your
Hmm.
vision is wonderful, because if people are paying attention to this, it's because something during the pandemic, something you got still enough to know that you need to work on something deeper in your life. So Baylan, it's really beautiful that you pulled the artists together for this. Um, and mental health month, it needs to be a mental health year or years or a lifetime. But you got to start somewhere. So these are the seeds. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for stepping into this space and for saying yes to somebody
Yeah,
that you've never met.
yeah. I know. See, I went by
And
my intuition. So
thank you, thank you, and also for agreeing to bring your story into Macy's. I wish we could bring your art in because people need to see it and experience it. But maybe
yeah,
next time, maybe next time you'll be
we could
better.
figure out a bigger way to do it, because the little pillows would get lost there. But we could do giant pillows. you know, yeah, throw them at people. No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
Or put
thank you,
them. Yeah.
Cynthia. Thank you so much. Now, if people want to find out more, where do they go?
Well, you can do two things. One is cynthiatom.com.
Hmm.
And actually, if you sign up for the mailing list, I don't send out much, but I'm about to send out something. I haven't sent anything out for the last 2.5 years. So
Oh.
it's not like you're going to get bombarded.
Mm.
But that's the best way to keep in touch. So cynthiatom.com. There's a placeofourown.org, which is the website. It's a little, because of my vision, I haven't been able to update it in quite some time. But it's placeofourown.org. And then we're on Instagram, Cynthia Tom Art on Instagram. That's probably the most updated. And then a place.sf. I think that's, if you type in a place of our own, it should come up for Instagram. But Cynthia Tom's probably the best way, because it's kind of all one entity.
Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for the work that you're doing in the world and for the healing and the good energy that you're able
Thank you.
to put out there for people to experience because a lot of people are in dark spaces.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
need to be they need to see these things. They need to they need to experience it just so that they can see the world is not all dark, that
No.
there is light in a lot of places. You can't have dark if you don't have light. You can't have
Right.
light without dark. I mean, we coexist. It's just which one are you focusing on? So let's focus on the maps of consciousness. Let's focus
Yeah.
on the healing. Let's focus on finding a place of her own. So every single one of us. So thank you so much,
And oh,
Cynthia.
you're so welcome. Sometimes it just takes a slight adjustment in the words that you speak to yourself. And I'm not saying, some people might think this is kind of Pollyanna, like, oh, it's wonderful. I mean, my life is really difficult. I can't even go to the grocery store by myself. And I don't have anybody here to take care of me. I have friends, but I just am turning it a little bit and just saying what is the gift inside of it? Because I went and had these paintings, and I needed the downtime that the pandemic's, because I overworked. So the pandemic's given me stillness. And I know there's so much hardship. There's a lot of hardship even with our place alumni, but sometimes you have to look for the good too in it, even if it's just a little bit. But thank you, Baylan, very, very much.
Oh, thank you. It's that finding that pin that pinpoint of light in the darkness.
Yes, yes.
And there it's not dark anymore.
Right. And you
Thank
can
you
go
so
back
much.
and forth. It's okay.
Yes, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah,
It's okay. There's no judgment. You just do what you need to do.
yeah.
Yeah. All
Thanks.
right. Thank you so much. We will have you back again a couple times here at Macy's and looking forward to everything and to see more of your work.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.